Now, I could just jump in with coronavirus like everybody else. In fact, in my feed alone, and by no means can I read all the mainstream and other articles out there, just from my feed alone, the ones that I subscribe to is a couple hundred, around 1,000 or so. There is around 50 articles on coronavirus, specifically about coronavirus, every single hour. At least 50 an hour. It's kind of ridiculous. You just scroll through that. It would it would take me just to read all the articles in one day about coronavirus. It would take me all day to do that, and I probably wouldn't get through that just out of my feed alone. There's just so many articles about coronavirus that it's I just don't want to hear about it anymore. I mean, I'm not turning a blind eye to it, but it's heavily politicized. It's regardless of the truth of the matter, it's going to be used against us. That's how anything that's being pushed or peddled in the mainstream media goes. It's going to be a tool used against us in one form or fashion. So another thing I could have talked about today was Turkey, obviously following up on the story that I covered a few days ago, that the escalation between Turkey, Russia, and Syria, but it has essentially went exactly how I predicted it to go, and it would be kind of redundant to continue to talk about that. So if you haven't actually looked into that or you want to know about that, just check out this video. Is Turkey going to war with Syria and Russia? So you can get caught up on that. But rather than that, I just wanted to focus just for a minute on a video that was posted yesterday by a guy named Bright Insight. Now, I mean, there's opinions on everything when it comes to things like this, and just how reaching certain things can get in this topic. But I've covered this before about how the biggest lie in human history is our actual history, the that the history that predates 6 to 12,000 years ago, that history that's been knocked out by cataclysms and major world-changing events that have knocked out large populations, and that history is kind of been lost in time. And the history that does come up is it's brushed over, talked about as pseudoscience, and how nothing predating those major events that wiped out large populations of the earth and nearly wiped us out altogether, how this society was primitive and not connected in any way, shape, or form. But the evidence that's been left behind due to things like these megaliths, which stand the test of time because of how massive they were and how uh, the material they were made with were structurally integrable, or that's probably the wrong word for that, but they were tough by any means because they were made out of solid bedrock and granite and other hard materials that could stand thousands of years of erosion and earthquakes and the like. That's why this is all that pretty much remains of these ancient civilizations. But this video by Bright Insight, and this guy does pretty good work on this. I'm not gonna lie, he's pretty good about at least simplifying this down for the average viewer. Doesn't have to spend months digging into the certain topics like I have spent, because it's a very interesting topic to me. But he makes the connections between dozens of different societies around the world, how their ancient cultures all have these connections, and where they shouldn't be, because at the time of these cultures' existence, there should have been no way for them to communicate or integrate each other's ideas or integrate their structural techniques and certain things, such as the emphasis that was put on these knobs that are found on megaliths, specifically megaliths, which are giant stone constructions. More times than not, they're made in such a fashion that it would take a pretty knowledgeable society of advanced techniques, not just simple stacking of bricks and stacking of rocks. It's like a jigsaw puzzle where they intertwine massive stones. Even some look like they've been heat treated. Things that you wouldn't expect from a primitive culture 12,000 plus years ago. But you see the same techniques being used all across the globe. And that's what he really points out here in this 30-minute video, and I highly suggest you guys to check it out. That's basically what I wanted to point out there, because I think that is something that we all need to know about, because like I said in the video that I covered this, it's the biggest lie in human history. Because if you can cover up the history, then you can control the narrative. And there's so much that we can find out about our ancestors that would benefit us, because the techniques used to even build these structures alone, it's that's some pretty interesting technology that had to have been used to make stone blocks that are dozens and hundreds of tons, some of these stones. So like if you just try to calculate that on primitive means, that it doesn't make sense. But I other than this video here by Bright Insight, I do have links on my other video, The Biggest Lie in Human History, where I reference the Younger Dryas, which was one of the biggest events that likely led to the knocking out of these people. Links to Graham Hancock, Randall Carlson, Brian Forrester, Robert Schoch, Robert Bivall, and John Anthony West, who is no longer with us. But all these are good starting points and reference points to really start to dig into that ancient history, that is more than just your standard, Egyptians and Sumerians and other ancient cultures, but those are the cultures that are believed to have come from the even older cultures that kind of had a setback in technology because of these events that wiped out most of the population. So check that out. Check out Bright Insight, and I'll let you have a wonderful day. Continue to keep your eyes open, and as always, this has been Tyranny Unmasked.